Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this meeting?
No, we have no regrets.
All right. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see no declarations. Could we, as is our custom for planning and development, move into the relaxed rule structure of Committee of the Whole with a mover and seconder, Councillor Dudek and Councillor Hazlitt-Thiel? Thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. That carries, and we are now resolved into Committee of the Whole. Council, this is a fairly light agenda. The first 4 items, in fact, are consent items. I'm wondering if there's any questions about them, and if not, is there a mover? Councillor Chisholm, thank you for the motion. One last try for questions. All right, I'll call the vote. Is there any objection to the consent items? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The consent items are adopted. That brings us to the meat of the matter for this evening, the public hearing item. This is a public meeting report, and in our system, what that means is we're collecting issues from the public, and at a later time, later this year, the Planning Department will bring back a recommendation report based on all of the considerations that are listed in the report and that may be added tonight. And if you're watching this on live stream at oakville.ca and you wish to speak to this item, please call 905-815-6095 so we can connect you to the meeting. You'll be called upon to speak following the registered delegations. And we have a presentation, and the presentation is from Kate Coburn, our planner on this file. And we're going to ask our technical whizzes to hook us up to Kate now. And we're going to give Kate the Zoom, which is how we, apparently you don't get the floor anymore, you get the Zoom.
I get the con for any Star Trek folks out there. Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you, members of council. Tonight, before you, I have an application for zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision, which has been submitted by Weston Consulting on behalf of their clients, 116739092 Canada Inc. The proposal relates to 6 new lots for detached dwellings, and the report can be found on page 33 of tonight's agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to introduce the application to council and to the public and to obtain any further comments for review as it relates to this application. And as Mayor Burton has indicated, if there's anyone watching the live stream of this meeting tonight on oakville.ca and you wish to speak to this item, please call 905-815-6095 and we will connect you to the meeting and you will be called upon to speak following the registered delegations. Next slide, please. The subject land is located on the west side of 8th Line, which is south of Ravine View Way. The applicant is also proposing to obtain town-owned lands located on the east side of Woodridge Way, south of Ravine View Way, to facilitate their proposal. This would result in them having a through lot with frontages on Woodridge Way and 8th Line. The property today contains a detached dwelling that fronts onto 8th Line, which would be demolished to facilitate the proposal. Slide, please. As way of background, in 1998, the lands surrounding the subject site were developed by a plan of subdivision. The town-owned lands are known as Block 117 of that plan, and they were conveyed to the town as stipulated by the subdivision agreement for the development. Schedule M of the subdivision agreement on title for that subdivision further provides that Block 117 is to be redeveloped with the abutting lands. The parcel is considered to be a remnant parcel, which has been maintained by Park Services for the purposes of maintaining the lawn, cutting the grass, etc. But the site is not maintained as a park and is not contained within the park's master plan. For reference, the subject lands are within 200 meters of Post Ridge Park to the west and within 500 meters of Glen Ashton Park to the southeast. Slide, please. The applicant is proposing 6 new residential lots for detached dwellings. 3 lots will have frontage onto 8th Line. and 3 lots would have frontage onto Wood Ridge Way should the applicant obtain the town-owned lands. The applicant requires a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate this proposal. Slide, please. The subject lands are designated low-density residential, which does permit detached dwelling types at a maximum density of 29 units per hectare. The applicant is proposing a density of 14.4 units per hectare in this site. The town-owned portion is also designated low-density residential, as was intended by the registered plan of subdivision. Slide, please. The lands are currently zoned RL5 Special Provision 1, and the Special Provision 1 has been applied to multiple properties within the town where there is redevelopment potential, particularly where lands are not included within plans of subdivision. The Special Provision 1 prevents an owner from redeveloping the lands for residential uses without a development application to be reviewed by the town. The town-owned lands are zoned RL8, which is consistent with the lands to the north and to the west as part of the original plan of subdivision. And as shown on page 11 of the staff report, there is a comparison of the surrounding zoning regulations within the proposed development, and it shows that the applicant's proposed dwellings are within or below the maximum provisions of the RL5 zone. You will also see from this slide, for context purposes, on the east side of 8th line, there is another property zone for RL5-1, Special Provision 1. Again, it is a large parcel that is intended to be integrated with the development abutting to the north and the south, but at the moment is not yet come forward with a development application. The applicant is proposing to maintain the RL5 zone with one modification to reduce the minimum lot frontage. The lot frontage would be reduced to 11.4 meters for one of the lots on Woodridge Way and down to 12.2 meters for the lots on 8th line. Slide, please. Since the writing of the staff report, 7 comments have been received by the public, which have opposed the proposal. Highlights of the comments received include concerns regarding the proposed lot widths, removal of the existing well on the property, the size of the houses, trees, privacy, what will happen with the town-owned lands, and the overall construction and development timeframes. Staff have identified similar issues and have highlighted them in the following slide. Slide, please. This slide reflects the various matters identified by staff to date and are captured within the staff report, and the review of the application will continue. These matters include ensuring consistency with the provincial policy statement and conformity with the growth plan, conformity with the livable Oakville policies, including the intensification policies contained within 11.1.8 and 11.1.9, compliance with the livable by design manual, including parts A and part C, which will reflect on the scale, massing, and landscaping for the proposal, the preservation and treatment of trees located on the subject site, as well as the town-owned portion, compatibility with the proposed development within the surrounding neighborhood context, evaluating the scale, massing, and setbacks of the proposed dwelling relative to the existing dwellings in the surrounding area, decommissioning of the well, the disposition of the town-owned lands, and any impacts on existing on-street parking and traffic conditions. With respect to the disposition of the town-owned land, planning staff will work with Realty Services to ensure that town policies and practices are followed with respect to any disposition. Further, planning staff will provide for specific draft plan conditions at the appropriate time that should the lands not be sold, the development would not proceed. Slide, please. In conclusion, staff is putting forward the following recommendation for council's consideration, and any additional comments received tonight will form part of the public record, and staff will be returning to council with a recommendation at a future planning and development meeting date.
Thank you very much, Kate. Council, do you have any questions, or have you identified any issues that aren't already on that list? Councillor Lischina, then Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kate, thank you for that report. Could you confirm, so the town-owned piece of land there was never designated as a park or a parkette. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that is correct. It was never intended to be designated as park. It's very clearly stipulated in the subdivision agreement that that block was intended for future development. There were a number of remnant blocks as part of the original subdivision that had been captured for future development. Those blocks have since been incorporated in subdivisions to the south and to the north of the overall plan. This particular block was intended to be merged or developed in conjunction with the lands that it immediately abuts. This is the first time we've seen an application.
Okay. And so the comments made from the surrounding neighbor, in particular the neighbor who previously had said that he would like to buy that piece of parkland and was told that it was not, or was told that we don't sell parkland, that was never actually communicated, I'm assuming, that it was a park. Or are you aware of any communication describing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I am aware that there had been some earlier discussions going back a couple of years ago with interest to secure those lands by a private property owner. It's not the practice of the town to sell or dispose of land to individual owners without there being consideration of a development application. So a development application had never come forward to the town for us to have that consideration. So my understanding is from Realty Services, the response was we don't dispose of those types of parklands or remnant parcels. Today, we're being presented with an application that would incorporate those lands within a development, and that's what we're evaluating today.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. I think staff have caught many of the issues that were brought up during the public information meeting. In particular, the privacy issues was certainly one that I heard. On that particular issue, can staff review the appropriateness of the privacy from side windows that might be part of this application, and whether the town has any ability to create regulations around what kind of windows might be used, whether they have to be opaque, and whether, if opaque windows are promised by the current builder, whether that can be maintained in the future by other homeowners who might take on the home.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, there is a potential that staff may consider a requirement for site plan approval for this development as the draft plan condition, or identifying that site plan may be required, given the character and the context of this infill intensification development. So staff can take that back and look at those opportunities in terms of which planning tools would be best appropriate in dealing with that kind of matter.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. With respect to the lot widths that we have, particularly those on Woodridge, can you define more specifically for all of us just how wide those three lots are and how they compare to those that are immediately around it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, as I said, the smallest lot is 11.4 meters. That would be on the Woodridge Way frontage, closely abutting, or I guess onto the more northerly portion. The other properties, other parcels will range, be higher than that and up to 12.2 meters in frontage. By comparison purposes in the surrounding area, the lot frontages are within that range. They can be as wide as 15 meters wide and as low as 12 meters wide. So based on the comparison that has been provided in the staff report, they're able to accommodate a dwelling that will be within the other zoning provisions for the RL5 zone, notwithstanding that the lot width is going to be slightly narrower than what is in the surrounding neighborhood.
And for the northerly lot on Woodridge, can staff review the appropriateness of the lack of straightness of that entry point to the road? As I understand it from the image that you showed, that lot is when you get to the actual road, it has to kind of swing out to the left or the right, depending which way you're looking at it, and whether that's appropriate, and whether forget about the width of the lots, whether the arrangement of that corner is appropriate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, understood. We will evaluate the lot fabric and the shape and pattern of the lots as part of this review.
Okay, and so hence the corollary question to that is whether it's appropriate to have 3 entry points on Woodridge from this lot, or whether a smaller number would be appropriate. And then the other, you've mentioned the tree preservation issues, and I appreciate that. There's another issue, which is can staff provide a review of the town sidewalk design on the 8th line side, please? To ensure that it meets the town standards appropriately.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, staff will continue to do a review through the sidewalks, yes.
Thank you, that's fantastic. Then the last question I had for you is, during your presentation, you made a comment to the effect of, if the town property is not sold to the developer, that would be a block to development on this parcel of land. Can you clarify that? Does that mean that no redevelopment whatsoever could happen on that parcel, or that they could redevelop using the land that they have, and it would have to be accessed from the 8th line side?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that would be correct. If moving forward, a recommendation is put forward with a condition of draft approval that stipulates that they need to obtain the town lands and they are unsuccessful in doing so, the applicant may need to revisit their approach on how they're going to choose to develop the parcel that they own. And that might mean that the form of development may change, or they may pursue only 3 lots fronting onto 8th line at the full depth of their property.
So, for example, if they were unsuccessful at obtaining the triangle of town-owned lands, they might come back and try to squish in a condo road or some kind of other format or of design that might be more challenging.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that is entirely possible. They would have to come back to the town for a new application to reconsider how they might develop the property further. And that's possible that it be a condo road form of development rather than the freehold form that they're proposing now.
Great, thank you very much, Your Worship. That's all the additional issues I had to bring forward. I look forward to knowing if there's any members of the public to provide information.
Thank you, Councillor. We have no public delegations. The planners for the applicant are standing by and available to answer questions if council has any. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Just for clarification, on page 39 of the report, I note that they are entitled to 29 dwelling units, whether they be detached, semi-detached, or duplex building types, 29 per site hectare, and they're coming in at 14. So does that mean they could have, instead of having 6, they could have 12 basically in that area if they wanted to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to councillor, I to be honest, I'd have to do the exact math to confirm what their limit is. What I can tell you is that for 6 dwelling units on that parcel, they would be well below the maximum allowed under the livable Oakville plan.
Yeah, which is 14.38 apparently. So I'm thinking roughly, I got to be within 1 or 2. If I go to 12, I'd be roughly around the 29. So they're coming in reasonable from what you're saying here then.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I mean, what they're asking for is for 6. If they wanted to come in and ask for more, we would evaluate it at that time. I don't know what would be considered reasonable without looking at a proposal. So for now it's 6, and that's what we are going to assess, and that's within the livable Oakville plan requirements.
Got it. Okay, I thank you. Now, just a question on the back at the beginning about the 90 days. So the 90-day period that you mentioned about with COVID, the period was between March 17 and June, so it was not affected at all. So So the purpose of this paragraph saying that COVID had no impact and anything to do with this application, that's what that paragraph's really saying?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly right. If you've noticed that staff have been providing reports to council that may have been applications received during the holding pattern that the province provided, and in which case we had to respond accordingly because the appeal date was reflective as soon as that holding period had finished on June 22nd. In this particular case, the application was received after June 22nd, so that meant that there was no holdback on the appeal period timeframe, and everything is proceeding as per the normal Planning Act requirements.
Thank you very much.
All right, Council, we have no registered delegations, and in the Councillor Lischina?
Your worship, I would move the report, or the receipt of the report.
Thank you. Let's get the planning director to list off what additional issues he's caught as a result of the submissions by council.
Through your worship to the councillors. I just wanted to provide an additional comment on the unit per hectare count. There are other limiting factors here, are lot frontage. So I think the 14.4 units per hectare and 6 units is likely to be the maximum number of units given the built form on this property. So the additional items I've identified are staff are to review the appropriateness of privacy issues with respect to any proposed side windows. Staff are to review the appropriateness of the shape of the most northerly lot on Woodridge Way. Staff are to review the town sidewalk design. And staff are to review the appropriateness of 3 entrances along Woodridge Way.
All right, has that caught everything? It looks like it has. Council, I'll put the vote. Is there any objection to the motion by Councillor Lischina? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. Thank you, everybody. We have no other items listed on the agenda, and a motion to rise and report to council would be in order now. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Is there any objection to that motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1, 2, 3, and 4, and public hearing item 5, as noted by the clerk. Is there a mover and seconder for my report? Councillor Palmer and Councillor O'Meara, thank you. Any objection to the report? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The report is adopted. Council, is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Councillor Palmer. Councillor Sanju.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I just wanted to say thank you to the community and a big hats off to everyone for doing such a great job this weekend with Halloween. I know that it was a rough time, and those of us that have young children have had a very special last weekend. And I wanted to give my hats off to my council colleague, Councillor Farnmar, for giving out some free pumpkins to our community. And we also had a really great event here in the ward and got to travel around and kind of have a walking parade with folks at a socially distanced event over the weekend. And it was a lot of fun. And I want to say thank you to Ward 7 and thank you to Oakville.
Thank you, Councillor Sanju. As I understand it, you're describing your Halloween train. Is that what you called it?
That's right. We had a trackless train.
So is that like the walking school bus?
Kind of. Maybe a little bit less magic, though.
And Councillor Adams, I know that you are a professional, you have an engineering education and your wife has an engineering education. Rumors reach me that you had a fancy chute on the front of your house to
Oh yeah,
slide
we had a candy chute
down.
at the front of our house. I don't know about anybody else, but that thing could launch candy down the street.
Well, I'm just glad that Halloween came and went without undue mess or fuss. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. How about a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws then? Councillor Robertson and Councillor Chisholm, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The bylaws are considered and read and as listed in the agenda. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. That completes all the work that we had assigned to us this night. And It's been terrific working with you, however short a time it's been, and we are adjourned.